Hey, what's going on, ReFi Nation? I'm so excited to drop another episode of ReFi Podcast. Today, we hear from Ben and Eline from Angry Teenagers. Now, I don't know about you, but when I heard that name the first time, I didn't quite know what to expect. But trust me, this one is definitely worth your time. I have been inundated by the volume of experiments at the intersection of climate and Web3. It's so hard to keep up, but this one definitely stands out like a true gem, offering a brilliant prospect of on-the-ground regeneration that could be something that unlocks impact at scale in a really powerful way with deep integrity. Angry Teenagers is an NFT collection that basically takes a plot of degraded land and chunks it into smaller parcels. In this case, they're starting with a pilot project in Ghana that they've done extensive work with and have partnered with a local NGO to do the on-the-ground regeneration by training up young people to do the work of planting trees and taking care of this forest that's being built. The separation of concerns that they have created from the on-chain world to the off-chain world is truly unique, in my opinion. I haven't seen anything else like it, and I think they've made a lot of really good decisions along the way. We get to hear from both Ben and Eline in their background and how they've come to make such a well-informed theory of change, and hear how for only $200, people can get involved and participate in this active regeneration with an incredibly exciting project in Ghana. So take a look. I think you'll enjoy it. It's just me today. John and Simmer are on holiday, but we'll hear from both of them in the coming episodes. And I think this is going to be a great time for ReFi as we see Angry Teenagers go live into the world and test out this hypothesis. Hey, what's going on, Ben? Hey, Eline. How you guys doing today?
Hello. Good.
Hi, very good to be here.
Awesome. I'm so stoked to speak with both of you guys. I've been in the weeds of all your materials, your white paper, and I think out of all the ReFi projects I've gone through, this one might be the most interesting of anything I've come across. But for those who haven't gone through all your materials, would love to just kick it off with you, Ben. What is Angry Teenagers and how did this come to be?
So yeah, thanks for that. I'm delighted to hear that you're finding it so exciting to look at. It is, so the Angry Teenagers at the core, they're a way for ordinary people to be able to take dramatic action on climate change. And there is this issue that broadly now, not quite as everyone as it should be, but almost everyone has taking action on climate change as one of their top priorities. In the US, it's like 70% of people have climate change action as their number one priority, but only about 30% have actually done anything about it. Because frankly, people just don't know quite what to do. And so the Angry Teenagers are the root, just a way that people can put their money into turning degraded land into rich ecosystems and do that on a kind of peer to project way that is massively scalable. And it's also doing it in a way that brings about climate justice in a way that scales. So that's kind of the heart of what we're trying to build here.
And I recognize there's so much to unpack there around, identifying the land, how it's being restored, how the value is being circulated amongst the community. But I'm curious, Eline, how you got involved with this project and, what your vision for this has been.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a completely different background. So I was a YouTuber and I run a production company that makes content for online. So lots of viral content, we did the gender bias riddle, which got over 14 million views for BBC Three. And we make lots of other big viral videos. And so Ben approached me and he was like, I've got this idea about, using NFTs to do something good. And I got involved and it sort of evolved from there. And I sort of looked at all the green projects out there and I thought, how can we do something that's completely different and more consumer facing than what we currently have? And that transforms this whole world. So yeah, that's how Ben and I got involved and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, he should probably tell you exactly what Angry Teenagers is.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it obviously as an NFT collection, but can you unpack that a little bit more, Ben? I think people are probably familiar with NFTs like Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks, but what is the Angry Teenagers NFT collection?
So the way the these are NFTs that directly fund good work going on in a specific place. So I'll just take you through the whole overall process. So we have a real world project coordinator company called Ecomint. And that's a company that we founded to do the work in the real world. Ecomint goes out, identifies potential projects, does all the environmental due diligence, understands what has happened on that land to degrade it, what work needs to be done to build it back up, talks with the local community, speaks with hundreds of people working out what the local community needs, does all of that hard graft that's very specific to each individual place. We then also, Ecomint defines out the milestones of work that are needed to plant the forest. And it starts with clearing out the scrub that's grown back. It then goes on to setting up tree nurseries, then whatever you need to do security-wise. There are all of these different steps that you need to build out. When the project's totally ready to go, we then mint the NFTs. And each NFT at the mint is geolocated to a specific square of land in the project. We use what three words to geolocate every NFT. And they are 625 meter squares. So it's an 8 by 8 what three words squares. They also each have a unique piece of art, an image of an angry teenager, kind of obviously. That kind of cult image. Well, we can talk about the artwork later. When the NFTs are minted, all of the money goes into a blockchain wallet. 100% of it goes into that wallet, and that wallet is controlled by the vote of the NFT holders. So none of the money goes anywhere else. It all goes straight into that wallet, which the NFT holders control. They then vote to release funds for each stage of the project milestone. They can't vote to just buy themselves a Ferrari. They can't just run off with the money. They can only vote on proposals that are injected by Ecomint. And this is how it's sort of setting that balance of ultimate control with the on-chain entity, but and legal responsibility and action lying with a centralized organization off-chain. The first milestone releases funds to Ecomint. 15% of the mint funds go to pay for all the setup costs, and then there's also setting up the tree nurseries and clearing out the scrub. As I said, that's part of the first milestone. As the forest grows, the NFT metadata is updated. And we've set up these decentralized oracles that update with photographs of each specific square of land, drone photographs, update the NFTs themselves. And they also update with data on carbon capture, with data on biodiversity increases, anything that we can measure. And with the incredible tools that are coming through, we can measure an increasing amount. We can update on the NFTs themselves. And this is kind of getting around that problem of data being buried in massive Vera reports. We want to make it totally visible to the consumer what is happening on your piece of land. You've put money into a forest in Ghana. There is the square that you put money into. There are the trees growing. Here is the impact it's having in data terms. As the forest grows and captures carbon, it generates offsets that are then sold. The money from that sale is shared. 45% of it goes into a local community development fund. First thing we're going to build in Ghana is a road, because that's what they desperately need. Then the school building, and then a basic hospital. That speaks to the kind of climate justice part of this equation. The money that is coming in from carbon credits is going directly back into that community. That's what ensures permanence of the forest. If the local community isn't benefiting, they're not going to keep tending for the forest in the way it needs to. 10% of it goes back to Ecomint, again, for the payment of and scaling of those ongoing operations in building the project pipeline. And 45% goes back into the project wallet. So that wallet that the NFT holders control. And that is currently projected to be about 2 to 3 times the initial investment for this first project. So if we raise $1 million, then we get back $2 to $3 million. We can talk about the timescale of that later. And that initial investment can then be reinvested in planting more forests. So it's a kind of way that by buying an angry teenager, you're setting in motion this snowball of reinvestment that can grow and grow and grow over time. And at the same time, consistently reinvesting back into that local community.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating model how you're taking this problem, which is people don't know what to do to make meaningful climate impact. And it's actually quite hard to know what to do. You know, it takes a lot of research, takes a lot of time, and not everybody has, you know, the means to be able to, you know, go out and plant thousands of trees. So I really appreciate you kind of creating this vehicle to make it easy for people to do. I'm curious, you know, Eline, from your perspective, the kind of like workflow that Ben talked us through is that the NFT holders have responsibility for, you know, distributing these funds based upon different project milestones. And I know from other projects that like participation in governance is something that's really hard to incentivize. So I'm curious, from your kind of content and community and engagement angle, like how are you guys looking at making this really important work fun and engaging and life-giving, given all the information you have coming from on the ground?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like I found that environmental projects were really hard to get into. They weren't very exciting. They're all green in their branding. They all look exactly the same. And I was like, how can we make this exciting? How can we make this part of our zeitgeist, our TikTok community, our Instagram world, and make it different, make it something that we want to engage with and that we want to be following how it's progressing. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. So we created this amazing artwork, these angry teenagers and each angry teenager stands up for a patch of land. So you've got a physical representation of an art piece that is there protesting for you on that land and is causing that regeneration. And then on top of that, you can check in to see how your land's doing, see how it's growing. And also, you know, just make it more fun. We created a black and white and, you know, colorful brand that will be completely different to sort of the green brands that you see for environmental projects. And that's really important. And now it's about the engagement. We've started our TikTok content today, and we have another video coming out. And so it's really about making engaging content alongside it.
I think that's all, exactly right. And the powerful stuff that Eline has been doing in terms of telling this story, turning the story of taking action on climate change from being a story of worthyism and lecturing and all of the stuff that we know doesn't change human behavior, and turning it into something that is like fun and vibrant and something that I tell my mates about. That's a big part of it. There's also a more technical question buried in what you said, which was, how do you ensure high participation in governance? So this is somewhere where we have got a technical solution for that, which is what we call opt-out voting. So rather than require everybody to be voting every single time, that's not the purpose of this. Broadly, when Ecomint comes back saying we have completed this milestone, Ecomint should have completed that milestone, because the whole validity of this balance relies on that. Ecomint doesn't keep getting their money unless they keep hitting the milestones. But and therefore, the structure we have for it is this opt-out voting, where Ecomint injects a proposal saying here is the evidence of having completed this milestone, and you've all got on your NFTs photographs of what we're doing on the ground each week. So, like, Big Brother is watching us. You know, you're checking our homework. But we inject that proposal. There's then a set time period. At the moment, we set that to 5 days, which the NFT holders have to object to releasing the funds. If 10% object, then that triggers a full vote, where we need to get a kind of a quorum threshold, and then you need to have a majority in order for it to go through. If we don't hit 10% objections, it just goes through. And so this is more of a check and balance rather than a DAO making the decisions. Like the DAO, the owners of Angry Teenagers don't necessarily know the first thing about how to run a reforestation project in Ghana. Probably they don't. That's what we have the experts in the real world to do. But we do need that accountability so that the on-chain entity isn't just trusting. This isn't just give your money to that organization and then hope that they do what they said they'd do. There needs to be that balance of power.
Something else interesting is that right now, everything in the environmental space is very much about being passive as opposed to active. So, you know, we're told to eat less meat, use less electricity, get an electric car instead of a petrol car. You know, there's all these things that are about not what you're not supposed to do. Whilst this is something, what we felt really strongly about is something we can actually do. So it's an active, a purposeful way to make change. And is what really appeals to me.
And I think it's interesting, the framing of angry teenagers, because I feel like there's an angry teenager inside of me that gets riled up of all the stuff that's going on in the world. Nation states aren't doing enough. Corporations aren't doing enough. Everybody seems to be lying and pointing fingers at each other. And, time is running out. And so I love how you're harnessing this like intense energy into something fun and something playful that people can begin to change their identity around and have a new way to express climate action, like you said, that isn't guilt-based, it's action-based. And so I'd be super keen to lean into the specific project that you're supporting with this initial mint. I know you guys have gone to great lengths to identify this impact area, which is degraded land. Talk to me about what's going on the ground, why you chose this project in particular, and what kind of impact is happening as a result of this reforestation.
Yeah, so the first project that we're doing is in Ghana. And we actually had a bunch of different possible projects that we could do, and we've still got a pipeline growing, particularly in South America. One of our investors is a trust that represents a huge number of indigenous communities across South America. We will build onto in the future. But this Ghana project was great. Primarily, like the first thing that drew us in was the partner that we have on the ground there is a guy called Chibeze Ezekiel, who runs an NGO called SYND Ghana. And she won the Goldman Award for Environmentalism 2 years ago for Africa for his work, essentially single-handedly stopping Ghana from starting up a coal-fired power industry. They were getting a lot of investment money from Chinese organizations to start having coal-fired power stations and building a coal-fired infrastructure. He stopped that from happening and put renewable in place. He's had huge impact, and he's a very cool guy. So we got talking with him and started looking. In fact, originally we were looking at regenerating mines because Ghana is covered in a lot of degraded and depleted, often illegal mines. And we were looking at whether we could regenerate those. Turns out legally there are some complexities around that doesn't make it the great first project. But she then identified, and his team identified this area of land. There's this type of land which is degraded savanna dry forest, which covers about 60% of Ghana. It's an enormous, enormous area. And it's largely unproductive. I mean, it's basically a few herders put their cows through it, but broadly nothing else. It's been deforested since the 1970s. When I was born, just before I was born, this was all a forest. And now it is nothing productive. It's not capturing carbon. It's not holding wildlife and so on. Why that's exciting to us is that we can start with a small project. Like we're starting with a 200 hectare site there. But if this works, if we can provide an economic model for this, we can scale this very, very quickly across a huge, huge tract of land with very similar requirements. We'll need to talk to each community individually, but the requirements within those communities are going to be pretty similar. Like they all need roads, they all need schools, they all need hospitals. And so there's all of those elements of being able to have that huge impact on climate and on biodiversity, and also on those communities that have lost the livelihood of the forest and are now struggling to find ways to make ends meet. So it's for all of those reasons and that scalability, it's just a great first project.
And it's interesting you've narrowed in on a project of 200 hectares, because I remember reading something in your articles around like 85% of degraded land is owned by small landowners that basically don't have the means to transition towards, regenerative practices like planting trees. I'm curious, like just in, the real world manifestation of planting trees, what happens in these communities when, degraded land is restored? What are the kind of second order benefits of this? I know carbon credits are kind of abstract and hard to assess, but, what are the positive externalities that come out of reforested land in these areas where, there's just 200 hectares, but what's coming out of this?
So we ran on the latest field trip out there. We ran what's called a Durbar, where we got everyone from the local community together to have discussions about it, to understand their point of view, understand their needs, requirements, and so on. It's quite an amazing event. It was the biggest Durbar in the community's history, and it was quite amazing. The photographs of it are wonderful. What we found there, well, the purpose of that was precisely to understand what are the benefits going to be. And so the first kind of benefits that you see are with the forest itself. As that grows, we are planting into that trees that will give fruits that will allow them to, what's the word for it? Apiculture, allow them to do beekeeping and produce honey is another part of it. And we're building that into the way that we replant the forest. So just the forest being there will start to create a source of food and a source of work for them. But then there's the actual training of planting the forest. So SYND is a youth organization in Ghana. They work with young people, and we are working with young people to train them to plant this forest. So they are learning those skills to be able to go into all of those industries, which we hope then to use them in as we plant more and more forests. And then, and then there is, as the money comes back in from the carbon credits, there's those direct infrastructural benefits where we speak with everyone in the community. We understand what they need. We thought from our first conversations that the school was going to be the thing they really needed. Putting a roof on the school. At the moment, it's open to the elements. In fact, after talking with everyone, the road came out number one. And just being able to get commodities into this community will be transformative. I also, one other thing that happened on that field trip, there's quite a touching story to me, was Solo, one of the team in SYND, said they were going around talking to each of the different groups, and they got to speak to the police chief and the fire department chief. And they had this massive pink angry teenagers banner with a picture of an angry teenager on it, and it was like bright pink. And the head of police was looking at it, was like, this is kind of odd. Because like normally when I hear about angry teenagers, I'm like, okay, I got to go and sort something out. What's going on here? There's something's gone wrong. And they were a bit skeptical about it. Like, what are you guys? Are you kind of anarchists who are coming here to cause trouble? And so I started explaining like people in the West, people in England, their young people's worries about climate change, what is terrifying them about their future, and how that is affecting people's mental health. And as he was talking, he said the guys just start nodding more and more. And then the fire chief runs off. It's like, okay, I was going to get some people for you. Comes back with a bunch of teenagers, explains it all to them. And they're all like, yeah, exactly. This is what I'm freaking talking about. And it was just amazing seeing that energy that we're trying to tap into is such a universal energy of the young people of the world at the moment. And as you said as well, John, it's not just the young people. It is in all of us, or in many of us. But there's something that I find so inspirational about their just uncompromising attitude, and they can't look at it any other way. It's just, we've got to freaking solve this. And
yeah, and I think a lot of us adults are looking to governments and big institutions to try and change something. But 200 hectares, what you were saying is, these privately owned patches of land actually can't, it has to be done by us. Us individuals can come together and can solve it on this scale. And we shouldn't, rely on governments, because that's just going to take too long.
Right. And actually, Eline, that ties back to like Genesis story, like where this came from my perspective, long term back, is that I wrote a book literally 20 years ago called The Ecology of Money by an economist called Richard Douthwaite. And his thesis in that was that if you follow the value creation behind any currency back far enough, you get to environmental degradation, whether it's oil, mining, industrial agriculture, and which means that as economies are growing, we're kind of inevitably screwing the world. And any work that you're doing as an NGO within that framework is just trying to push water back up the hill. The whole system is set up wrong. And his thesis was, to get around this, we need to create an international reserve currency that is backed by carbon credits, so that the more countries want to trade, the more trees they have to plant to generate those carbon credits. And that struck me at the time as being like, that's a great argument, but it's not going to happen. And because we're not going to get these governments to agree to all of that. And That's what when I first came across Bitcoin, this was what got me excited about crypto was, we've now decentralized. We've got the capability to decentralize the creation of stores of value. That is exciting because that means we don't need to wait on those guys or on those governments to do it. And that's really at the heart of what we're trying to do here. It's a peer to project movement. It's allowing individuals to put small amounts of money that they have into doing really important work, not as a donation, but as something that they can stay there, they can see it, they can keep control of it, and can have an increasing impact over time. And I think that's, to me, the thing I'm most excited about in the possibilities that crypto as a technology has opened up to us. It's like, that's what gets me excited.
And something we should probably mention is that we're hosting it on Tezos, where, minting one NFT is the same amount of energy as a tweet. So it's not harmful we made sure it was the most eco-friendly blockchain, obviously.
And obviously, I'm so sold on the idea of this new technology to allow people to kind of create new forms of money that express human values. But I'm curious how you've been managing this, Eline, on the front lines in terms of communicating this story, because there's so much misunderstanding, both about climate science and about Web3, crypto, whatever you want to call it. What are the kind of cultural vectors that you're seeing as you're trying to get this story on the world? Like, what are the pushbacks and what are the currents that you're observing?
Oh, we did so much testing, especially in the beginning. Right, Ben, remember that when we were testing it, and as soon as people heard the word crypto, they were like, no, we can't have an environmental project on crypto. And now I had to explain, look, it's basically a contracting technology, right? So for people, it's, we're contracting this patch of land with you, and you have the right to exchange information with that patch of land. And that's what the NFT stands for. And if we host it on Tezos, actually, it's not harmful for the environment. It's super, super energy efficient, but that's a lot of communication that you have to do. And so we worked on the key messaging for so long to try, because also it's a complicated new technology that we're using. So to really get that message across to the general public is really hard. And then we had to think about which audience do we go after first? Who understands this? Is it more about the environmental activists, or is it more about people who are already into crypto and who'd like to look at doing something good in that space? So I think we're there, but yeah, it took some time.
What did you settle on in terms of the initial audience and kind of how you go about taking this to market?
Crypto curious is what we call them. So crypto curious are heavily into crypto already with an environmental angle. And then we're also keen to the crypto curious people who are keen to get involved in crypto and who we can actually encourage to get involved, especially on something like Tezos.
The kind of people who maybe have a Coinbase account, they've got a couple of bits of crypto tucked away somewhere, but they haven't got their MetaMask working. They're not like deep into crypto, but they're kind of interested in it. Those people, we're finding you can convert, you can bring over, get excited about it quite easily. People who are totally not into crypto, they're not going to buy at this stage. They're not the early adopters. But that appeal of being able to just buy something and you can see where in the world that piece of land is and you can see the impact of it, that is something that's a message that people get. And they can get it really clearly. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. I put some money into that. I see the land and I can watch it grow. That sounds exciting. And I can sell it on if ever I want to get rid of it, if ever I need the money.
And it's a game changer for the sort of charity and donation world as well. I think it should be much more transparent. We don't see what happens to our money when we donate it somewhere. And also going back to those private landowners, ideally what we'd have is that people who own land who would like it reforested can eventually host it on our platform, and we can make more of these projects available to anyone. And so anyone with land who wants it reforested could list it as an angry teenage project.
Oh, that's interesting. So long term, you can kind of open this up, and then, I guess there's some sort of council that decides which projects to do due diligence on. Is that sort of how this thing scales and grows?
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I think the kind of the reality is that the work that needs to be done to regenerate the forests of the world is highly location specific. It is non-fungible. Like
Yes.
one tree is not fungible with another. And that's what we are building on the real world operations side. That is the business that we're building there. And on the crypto side, we're building this scalable funding engine, which can create these products that individuals can buy, can use to have a direct impact and see the impact that they're having.
So the kind of organization architecture, just to recap what you've said, you've got, this online on-chain entity that exists to deploy capital into a wallet and kind of be a bit of a steward and a gatekeeper and provide a check and balance against, ensuring that milestones are actually being met. You then have Ecomint, which is the sort of in real life entity, which does the due diligence and identifies an on the ground partner who's actually doing the work of regeneration, right? So the cash flows are really going into the local community, the local context. And there isn't this kind of like neo-colonial, revenue stream that creates, awkward interests and malaligned incentives. Is that right? Is that kind of how things are set up? Or are there actually people from outside the community doing the regenerative work?
Yeah, that's correct with a couple of extra provisos. One is that, so we have leased, there is a lease on the land, but that lease is actually held by SYND Ghana, the local operating partner, which we gave a bonded donation that money can only be used to buy that lease and use that lease to regenerate the land according to what we had agreed. So there is a legal agreement in place between Ecomint and that company and that NGO. But it was important to us that a local NGO held the land title, not Ecomint, not an on-chain entity, for exactly the reasons that you're saying. So that's one thing. The other thing to the idea of who's coming in to do the reforestation. Actually, when we had the conversation with the local chief, he asked exactly that question before he allowed us to take the lease on the land. He said, who's going to be doing this reforestation? And because SYND Ghana were able to say, our whole organization is here to train young people, to get them into work. And what we're going to do is work with your young people to create jobs for them, to give them skills while we're planting this forest. And then he was like, okay, this is good. We're totally on board. And let's move ahead.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Give me chills. I feel as though if you can crack this pilot and make it work, this could be a real game changer in the way that, Web3 and people around the world who've been fortunate to have access to opportunity and capital can make a difference. I want to touch a little bit deeper on the kind of value creation stream. I get the regenerative behaviors are being performed by these communities on the ground. I think that's totally the right move. But as soon as you kind of go into the carbon credit space, it makes my mind open up a whole avenue of questions. So who's verifying this? Who are issuing the credits? And who are the buyers? And how are you ensuring that you're getting the right price for this and really maximizing the value of what's happening on the land?
Yeah, so in the long term, it's kind of important that we lower costs of monitoring and MRV costs coming down. The more that we can automate that and take advantage of remote sensing technologies, the better this will be in the long term and the more accurate it will be. And I think in order to scale to really small plots of land of 2 hectares, 3 hectares, we're going to need really great remote sensing technology. So that's definitely the direction of investment and work. But that's technology is not quite there for us right now today. So in the first project, we are using Plan Vivo protocols in order to do the inspection, to monitor the community impact and to design the project. We could have gone with Vera. The reason we went with Plan Vivo for a few reasons. Chief amongst them is probably cost. Second among them is the focus on community. We could do it with CCB credits in Vera as well, but Plan Vivo is fully set up to be about community, biodiversity, and carbon capture. So that was another reason to go for them. The way that we're going to be selling the credits is over the counter to specific companies. We're not going to be releasing these onto the open market. we want to control where these credits go. And as well as creating a consumer brand for the angry teenagers, we're really conscious of creating a brand in these carbon credits. We want it to be buying angry teenager carbon credits is something that a company does because then all of their consumers know, all of their customers know that they are really doing great work because they have got those branded carbon credits. And it's associating that at the moment, the highest quality carbon credits still require you to really have a lot of deep understanding in order to make the judgment. And reading through your Vera report and judging the quality of a carbon credit is a skill that not a lot of people have, which means that when companies are making claims about their impact, their carbon impact and their net carbon strategy, it's very hard for their consumers to judge it at all. And that in turn means it's very hard for the projects to get the right price for the great work that they're doing. They don't necessarily command a much higher price for doing much better work. Because the companies just need to satisfy their PR requirements, if I'm being very cynical. And I think there's this opportunity for us to create the first really strongly branded, consumer branded carbon credits that then there's an incentive for companies to come into. And the companies that we're speaking to so far are excited by this idea that they can tell anyone, like, go on there, look on the NFT, you can see what that piece of land looked like last week. It's definitely still there. It's definitely still growing and they're caring for it. And that transparency and independent verifiability combined with the overall brand of the movement, I think can be a really powerful, just new paradigm in the carbon credit market.
I think it's an absolute crime that the carbon credit market is so closed off to individuals at the moment. And so this would be that bridge where we can access that super important market as an individual.
And how are you approaching that difficult dynamic where carbon credits are kind of abstract and people don't really know what they are? There's a lot of kind of skepticism and criticisms about carbon. How are you approaching that in terms of your messaging, Eline? Like, are you bringing much of the carbon kind of education into your kind of consumer-focused stuff, or is this more tailored towards the kind of brands that you're trying to approach for selling this stuff over the counter?
No, we definitely take it into account because obviously there's a lot of greenwashing going on, and people who are into their environmental stuff, they know what's going on with the carbon credits. The reason we chose carbon credits is because it is an existing market. We could have created a whole new market, but we just thought, there is an existing market. It's not perfect. There are flaws, and we know all about them. So we will just work with the existing market and try and make these branded carbon credits the better ones, the right ones.
But remember as well that the carbon credits that we're selling we're selling those to companies. And just as Eline says, taking advantage of the fact that there are companies that will pay money for carbon credits if you can evidence that you're doing really good work. Well, we've set up a system that evidences really highly all of the really detailed good work that we're doing. So we may as well sell into that market and take money back to reinvest in doing more of that work. But for the individual who's buying the angry teenager, we're not asking individuals to think about their carbon footprint. We're not saying buy an angry teenager and that will offset your flight to the Bahamas, because that messaging for individuals, it just hasn't really worked. People have been trying for years and years and years, and I know just introspectively, I don't have enough trust in any measure of exactly what my carbon footprint is. I get confused anytime I try and calculate it. I don't know whether I should be accounting for the whole plane or just the plane divided by the number of people on it. Or it's just incredibly confusing how to calculate your carbon footprint. I also don't know when I'm buying a carbon credit to offset it. I just get lost in option paralysis. And then I just think, well, I'm not going to do this. And also it's just a constant spend each month. So it's a very difficult consumer proposition to get out there. And so we're sidestepping it with the angry teenagers, just saying, you want to make good stuff happen? Just put your money into planting this forest and you can see exactly what's happening. You can you're not spending your money in the same way as you are with buying a carbon credit, where you have to retire it in order for it to actually be worth buying. You are putting your money in, but if you do need that money back, you can sell it on to somebody else who can then hold it and continue having that control and impact. When you buy an angry teenager, your money goes in. You can't take the money out of that wallet. And when money comes back from carbon credits and goes into that wallet, you can't take that out either. So for the Howey test, you're not earning money yourself from somebody else's work. So these are not securities, these are not investments. But there is this value building up in that wallet that your vote is a vote over how more and more money is used. And more money is used to do things that you have bought into ideologically, i.e. planting a forest. And that's quite a powerful new paradigm, because it's not a donation and it's not an investment. And it's something that I think NFTs have been incredibly powerful at doing, is to give away for a community who have a shared idea of what they believe is valuable, to put a price onto that thing. And so in the Bored Ape Yacht Club, you might have a shared view of what the future looks like, the importance of the metaverse, and the kind of vibe of that future. And through the Bored Ape Yacht Club, you can put an actual price on each of those tokens. And what we're enabling here is that people who believe it is valuable to plant a forest that nurtures biodiversity and nurtures a community in the parts of the world that we most need to reforest, people who have that belief can now hold an asset that puts a price to that belief. And that's a really new thing, and it's a change, and it's going to be exciting to see how that develops.
It's an impact. It's like you're putting a value on the impact that you're going to have, the impact tokens. How much is that impact worth to you, really?
Yeah, I think that's such a game changer. The fact you're buying an asset that holds value, that creates value in a specific community that you can monitor and be a part of, yet also not worry about the complexities of carbon credits and all of the dynamics of how to verify this stuff. I think, some of the strategic decisions you guys have made, it seems, very spot on. I'd love to unpack a little bit of like the unit economics of this. How much is an angry teenager going to cost for a 200 hectare plot of land? What are the you mentioned, 2 to 3x return over an unspecified time period. What kind of carbon credit issuance are you looking at, and how much of these credits can be sold for? Because I know some of our listeners have stronger finance background. I'd love to just look at the napkin calculation and then what this could do at a greater scale.
We're still finalizing the details of this, but just ballpark simple figures. Each angry teenager mint will be about $200. On the allow list, there'll be a little bit of a discount. On the public, maybe a little higher, 210. That is for a 625 meter square is what that represents. So we'll be minting 5,000 of them broadly to raise about $1 million. And that $1 million will cover all of the tree planting, which is the overwhelming cost. The land lease is a very, very small part of this, which will be done over the first 2 to 3 years. It's setting up the tree nurseries, all of this part. And then the ongoing expenses are a bit of ongoing care, a bit of security, which is still required. And that after the first, so that we raise enough money that definitely funds the project for the first 5 years. And we have a buffer level left in the account that we don't go below. That's about $180,000. So there's a kind of contingency fund built into that. Then as the carbon credit revenue starts coming back in, it will always top that wallet back up to the buffer level if it has been spent. So we maintain it at that level. And then or any excess funds go back into the community development fund or across to Ecomint. In terms of the price of the carbon credits, I mean, this is very much an unknown at the moment. We are looking for what we're putting into the models is a kind of $20, $25, $30. We believe that we can command a high price from our conversations so far, because of the over-the-counter deals that we're doing, because of the high level of transparency, because of the detail that people have, and frankly, because of the branding that companies want to be aligned with this movement, that allows us to command a slightly higher price. Our goal is to drive that even higher, and we really want to, the more we can drive that price up, the faster we can reinvest in more forests, and the more we can reinvest into the local communities. So it's a kind of whatever we need to do in order to make it make sense for these companies to buy these carbon credits at a high price, we will be doing. So really understanding for them, this is largely a PR question. So what is going to work most well for them in terms of the PR? What marketing collateral do they need? What assets they need? What stories do they want to be part of? And the more we can give them on that, the higher price that we'll be able to charge for those carbon credits.
Cool. So just to recap, we've got this initial plot of land, 200 hectares in Ghana, stewarded by a local organization that you've built, great relationships with. You're breaking this up into 5,000 different parcels of land, sold roughly for $200 each. You've got $1 million inflowing, which provides like 5 years of cash to be able to finance all of the reforestation and get carbon credits issued, at which point they'll be sold for around $25, producing $2 to $3 million of revenues. You're looking at like 80,000 tons of carbon credits over a 200 hectare period. Is that sort of roughly the sketch there? Did I get?
I think that's roughly it. I don't actually have Ian, who runs our project team, would be closer on the carbon credit estimates, but that sounds
cool.
Probably right.
Super interesting. I mean, this seems like a really exciting, viable model. I mean, it's interesting also that you've applied it specifically towards regenerating degraded land as opposed to preserving land and preventing deforestation, because I know that's also a big part of, the climate journey, is protecting the nature that we already have. Is there any looking towards protecting forests as opposed to just regenerating degraded land?
So I think there are a lot of projects already looking at protecting forests, and I think it clearly needs to happen as well. But I think that for the consumer product here that we're building, that the visceralness of being able to see that is the piece of land, there was no forest, now there's a forest, and having that kind of relatively unequivocal positive impact is where we can have the biggest impact. That said, we are totally open to looking at forest protection options as well, and looking at what you've been doing with Redemption DAO and so on. We'd be really excited to explore all of those options. But in the name of focus, we have focused in on forest planting as the first stage.
Seems great. Yeah, seems like a great focus. I know, Ben, you have a background in product because I use one of the apps that you made every day and learning Portuguese over at Menrise. But I would love to just get a quick background on who else is involved with this project, where are people's professional settings, and how have you guys built a team to really make this come to life?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll just touch on my background there. As John says, I founded a language learning app called Memrise that we've built over the last 10 years to kind of 60 million users around the world. And that the kind of transferable piece there is language learning is about creating a language learning product is about nudging people from wanting to do something to actually doing something about it. And I mentioned that 70% of people want to do something about climate change and only 30% are doing it. But with language learning, it's like 85% of people kind of want to learn another language, and about 5% are actually doing something about it. So we've got an even more extreme situation in language learning. But it is just understanding how to make things appeal to people, how to nudge them in the right direction. Also, the experience there has definitely informed how we've built the team. So from the tech leadership, so our technical co-founder is a guy called Gabe Cohen, who his day job is as leading the platform development on Jack Dorsey's Web5 project. So that's kind of right at the forefront of what is being done on blockchain. And that's where the technology that we've built there for being able to create these decentralized oracles for updating the NFTs, that's actually built on a platform called Ceramic, where Gabe used to work previously and worked on that technology. We then got Christoph, who's our sort of lead blockchain developer, who security developer, but he is just such a linchpin in the Tezos community and has been incredible on what he's managed there. We've got this amazing real world project team who are based in Japan and Korea, led by a guy called Ian, who actually dropped out of college to become an environmental protester 10 years ago. So he's no longer an angry teenager, but he certainly was a genuine angry teenager dropping out of university in order to do that. And he spent the last 10 years running environmental projects all over the world, building movements, making important work happen. Then we've got a kind of operations team led by Ellison Fisher, who used to run operations for a part of Skyscanner. Again, very solid, deep startup experience in how to get complex projects running. And this is really built on my experience at Memrise, which has shown me time and again that getting the very best people you can involved at the very earliest stage just changes the trajectory of where you can go. And so that's really been what we've been doing from the start here, is just getting people who are real superstars involved. And that's why we've managed to achieve so much in a really very short period of time.
Absolutely love it. And for people listening, Eline, what's the call to action? How can people support you? How can we get involved? And when can we expect a whitelist?
Go now to angryteenagers.xyz. Become an angry teenager. Protest. Do things that aren't expected of you, and come on our list. That would be the best.
Yeah, come and I think
you can get a discount.
Follow us on Twitter, and we'll be doing a series of whitelist announcements on there and getting more and more people on. And as I say, the whitelist gives you that discount on the mint, and also guarantees a spot. So we'll have 1,000 whitelist spots out of a mint of 5,000. So we'll be announcing those over the next few weeks.
And I don't think we have many places left. So yeah,
it is filling up. It is filling up.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much. So for those of you, listening, it's Angry Teens NFT on Twitter. And I personally have been super, just blown away by the depth of consideration y'all have taken at taking a really complex challenge, how to get people involved in climate action, making it simple, easy to do, moving away from the kind of saturated greenwash narratives that are just so ineffective, and giving people a very specific action to take place. $200 is something a lot of people around the world can afford, and the fact that we can have a dashboard to show what is the impact happening on the ground and have a voice in deploying funds towards these projects that are planting trees for the good of community and nature all around the world. I think this is a shining star, an experiment that I hope yields lots of learnings in the space. And so I would love to talk to you guys down the road and see how this progresses after this initial mint. But just want to say thank you to both of you for deciding to dedicate your life to this and for sharing a little bit of your journey today. And I wish you all the best. I hope that you guys smash it. And I'm definitely going to be among one of the little parcel holders taking this baton forward. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, John.